You won't believe the kind of trouble I got into just for installing a smart lock on my own pool fence. Imagine minding your business, improving your property's security, and suddenly having the HOA Karen's son calling 911 on you, claiming you're the criminal. That's exactly what happened to me. And trust me, it turned into a battle I never saw coming. It all started on a warm Saturday morning. My backyard pool was one of my favorite places to relax, but it was also becoming a constant headache. Kids from the neighborhood, including Karen's teenage son, had been sneaking in to use it without permission. I had caught them several times splashing around while I was at work or even late at night. I wasn't trying to be the bad guy. I just didn't want strangers risking their safety in my pool, especially since it could make me liable if something went wrong. So, I decided to upgrade the old fence lock to a smart lock that only I could control. It wasn't cheap, but I figured it was worth it for peace of mind. That morning, I had my tools out, carefully mounting the device when I noticed Karen's son lurking near the fence. He was about 18, cocky, and always gave me this smug look whenever I confronted him before. "What you doing there?" he called out, arms crossed, acting like I was trespassing on my own property. "I'm installing a lock," I replied bluntly. "Pool's off limits unless I say otherwise." He scowled, muttered something under his breath, then stormed off. I didn't think much of it, but not 10 minutes later, I heard sirens. At first, I figured it was just coincidence, but when the police cruiser pulled up directly in front of my driveway, my stomach sank. 2 officers stepped out and Karen's son came trailing behind them, pointing dramatically at me like he just caught a burglar in action. "That's him," he shouted. "He's locking us out of community property." I nearly dropped my drill. "Excuse me?" I asked, stunned. The officer walked over and said, "Sir, we got a call about a possible dispute over this pool fence. Can you explain what's going on?" Karen's son folded his arms, smug grin plastered across his face. I could already see where this was headed. He was trying to paint me as the bad guy for securing my own pool. And that was just the beginning. Standing there with the police in front of me, I couldn't believe the nerve of Karen's son. He stood back smirking as if he had already won some battle I didn't even know I was fighting. The officer's tone was calm but firm. "Sir," he said, "this young man claims you're installing a lock to block community access to this pool. Is that correct?" I almost laughed at how ridiculous it sounded. "Officer," I explained, "this is my private pool. It's in my backyard behind my fence, and I pay every dime for its upkeep. There is no community access here. The only people who use it are me and whoever I invite." Karen's son immediately jumped in. "That's not true. My mom said this pool was meant to be shared. Everyone on this street knows it. He's not allowed to just lock it up." The audacity in his voice made my blood boil. He spoke with the confidence of someone who had been told their entire life that the rules didn't apply to them. The officers exchanged a glance, clearly unsure what to believe. I pulled out the property documents I had already printed weeks ago because when you deal with an HOA Karen, you learn to be prepared. I handed them over. "You'll see here the pool is part of my property. It's not listed as any sort of communal area. This isn't even something the HOA is responsible for." One officer flipped through the pages, nodded, and handed them back. "Looks pretty clear to me," he said. But before I could breathe a sigh of relief, Karen herself stormed out of her house, her voice carrying across the street like nails on a chalkboard. Officer, you need to make him stop," she shrieked. "He's putting in some weird electronic lock to keep us out. That pool was always meant for the neighborhood." She marched right up to my fence, wagging a finger in my face. The officers held up their hands, trying to keep the peace, but Karen wasn't letting up. She ranted about how community spirit meant everyone should have access to what she called shared spaces. I finally snapped. "Karen, this is my yard, my pool, my fence. Your son has been trespassing for weeks. That's why I'm putting this lock in to keep him and anyone else from breaking in again. The officers shifted uncomfortably. It was obvious they knew I wasn't in the wrong, but Karen's theatrics had created a scene they couldn't just walk away from. And the worst part, this was only fueling her determination. Karen wasn't the type to back down once she had an audience. And with the officers standing there, she doubled down on her performance. She pointed at the smart lock I had half installed and practically shrieked, "See, he's turning this into some sort of fortress. He knows he's guilty. Otherwise, why would he be hiding access from everyone?" One of the officers sighed, clearly exhausted already. "Ma'am, as far as we can tell, this pool and the fence around it are on his property. Unless you can provide proof otherwise, there's nothing illegal about him installing a lock." Karen's son immediately piped up. "But what about safety? What if a kid gets trapped in there? This is a danger to the neighborhood." The irony was almost laughable. They were the ones sneaking in, and suddenly they were worried about safety. I kept my cool, though my fists clenched tighter with every word. "The danger," I said flatly, "comes from kids trespassing in my yard. If they stay out, there's no risk." Karen huffed, her face turning red. "You'll be hearing from the HOA about this. You can't just make unilateral changes that affect the community." At that moment, the officer raised an eyebrow. "Is the HOA actually responsible for this property?" he asked. Karen stammered, but didn't have a clear answer. She knew as well as I did that the HOA's authority didn't stretch into my backyard. Still, she tried to spin it, rambling about community trust and shared expectations. The officers finally wrapped things up. "Sir," one of them told me, "you're within your rights here, but I'd recommend documenting any future incidents, especially if there's trespassing involved. It'll help if this continues." Karen glared at me like she wanted to set me on fire. Her son muttered something I couldn't catch, but the smugness was gone from his face now. They both retreated back toward their house, but I could feel the storm brewing. This wasn't over. Not by a long shot. As soon as the patrol car left, I finished installing the lock and tested it twice. The electronic click when it secured felt like a small victory, but also a warning bell because I knew Karen, she wasn't going to just walk away after being humiliated in front of the police. Sure enough, that night I caught a shadow creeping near the fence. The motion sensor lights flicked on, and there was Karen's son, tugging at the gate like he had some right to be there. When it didn't budge, he kicked it hard, then pulled out his phone. And that's when I realized he was calling 911 again. The moment I saw Karen's son dialing 911 at the gate, I knew this was about to spiral. He shouted into the phone like he was reporting a robbery. "Yeah, he's locked the pool again. He's holding community property hostage. Get someone down here quick." His voice carried across the street, loud enough for neighbors to hear. By the time the police arrived again, I was already waiting by the fence, phone in hand with my own video recording. This time, I wasn't going to let Karen or her son twist the story. The same two officers stepped out, and I could tell from their weary expressions that they weren't thrilled about being dragged back here. Karen came storming out of her house again, robe flapping, already in full meltdown mode. "Officers, arrest him," she demanded. "He's tampering with property that doesn't belong to him." I raised my phone calmly. "Before you listen to her, you should see this." I played the footage I'd captured of her son trespassing, kicking the gate, and then making his exaggerated call. The officers watched silently, their expressions tightening as the truth sank in. One of them turned sharply to Karen's son. "Is this you in the video?" He shuffled his feet, suddenly not so bold. Yeah, but, no buts," the officer cut him off. "That's trespassing and property damage." Karen exploded. "He's just a kid. You can't charge him for wanting to use what belongs to the neighborhood." The officer held firm. "Ma'am, this pool is clearly private property. You've been told this already. If either of you step foot back here without permission, you can and will face charges. For once, Karen was speechless. Her face twisted with rage, but even she knew pushing further would only dig a deeper hole. Her son stood there sulking, glaring at me like I'd ruined his life. But the smug arrogance from earlier was gone. After giving their final warning, the officers left. I turned to Karen and her son, my voice low and firm. This ends now. You set one more foot on my property, and I'll have you arrested. Consider this your last warning. They stomped off without another word. I finished locking the gate, the smart lock glowing faintly in the dark. For the first time in weeks, I actually felt some peace of mind. Karen never apologized. She never would. But after that night, her son stopped showing up at my fence. The lock did its job, and the police's warning sealed the deal. In the end, all it took was one smart lock, a little patience, and the truth on my side to finally shut them down. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, and share your thoughts in the comments below.